communications to the council?
Yeah, let's make sure we don't have any correspondence that was sent in earlier. However, we just went public, so it may be worth it just to give 1 or 2 minutes to allow Zoom if any attendees want to trickle in. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to make a comment, public comment? If so, just put your comments in the Q&A. Okay, we received nothing. Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay. No. Let the record note that there's no communications to the council and public comments. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the September 6, 2022 general fund meeting. Any comments?
So moved.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second motion to approve. Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. Vice Chair Newell?
Yes.
Dr. Bonham?
Yes.
Councilmember Maynard?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayashi?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Okay, the minutes are approved unanimously by the 6 council members. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the, let's see, I'm gonna put that up. It's the discussion of the total personal income forecast for calendar year 2022. Dr. Bonham, would you like to start us off?
You are muted, Carl.
We can't. Okay.
That's perfect. So sure, I'll open the discussion. This is a forecast for nominal personal income. So Seth, what is our current forecast?
It is currently negative 1.5.
Okay. So year to date, nominal personal income is down 3.3%, and seems to me like we had a quite a bit more negative forecast, and then we raised it. But then all the data has been revised since we did our last forecast, and the revisions were largely to increase income in 2021, and so the effect being to lower the year-over-year growth rate even further. So I mean, the forecast that is coming out of our model right now for nominal income is negative. This is nominal, not real. Let me double check then. Sorry.
Table 6 in your packets actually has that figure, Carl. It has all the DPED's forecast and UHERF's forecast for 2022.
Table.
That's page 8.
Okay. So why doesn't someone tell me what it says while I'm looking for it?
1.2%. So UHERF's, yeah, is positive 1.2%. DPED's is negative 0.5%.
Seth, when did DBID come out with their forecast?
August 24th, 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are
So-
both.
Yeah.
Those are both Q3 forecasts. I mean, frankly, so both of those would have been done before revisions, and the revisions have the effect of lowering the current year numbers. What we're getting right now in our model is basically zero.
Are we
Carl,
looking at
2022.
are we looking at calendar year?
Yes,
Carl, what was GDP for the third quarter? Wasn't it a little bit positive?
US GDP.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was 2.6%.
Mhm.
But this is income. It's not right. We're not forecasting GDP. And actually, I'm still a little surprised that that income is as weak as it is, because the job numbers have continued to improve. I mean, so actually, real visitor spending in the third quarter, we just got the visitor data for September. And if you look at real visitor spending in the third quarter, it's basically recovered to pre-pandemic levels. And so anyway, I was a little surprised. I suspect that the income data is still being influenced a little bit by the transition away from some of the pandemic support programs. I mean, we know it is the transfer payments for sure, but also labor income. And for the year as a whole, labor income. So this isn't affected by transfer payments or dividends or anything like that. Labor income, we think it's going to go up over 6%. And then the reason you end up with total income being roughly zero is mostly because of the decline in transfer payments.
Yeah.
Carl, just curious.
Yeah, the transfer payment numbers are down almost 20% in our forecast for the full year.
So Carl, with regard to the transfer payments, just curious, does that factor in Biden's, I guess, the loan forgiveness? Would that be considered a transfer payment?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it would be, just like that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that would. It's obviously not labor earnings, so yeah, I think it would. I think that's where the PPP forgiveness showed up, was in transfer payments, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay.
I mean, that's not likely to affect 2022 anyway, right? It's going to be held up in the courts until who knows when. And as a share of total income in the state, it's actually going to be a pretty small number. I mean, certainly less than 0.5%. So basically, I would suggest we adopted a number of zero.
And again, this is a nominal number, Carl?
Absolutely. I mean, to get to zero, we're going to have growth during the rest of the year. And that makes sense to me. The labor market is continuing to improve. We don't think it'll improve much longer than 2022, but it has continued to improve. Actually, the most recent data on unemployment showed declines in unemployment and increases in labor force. We're not seeing the kind of wage gains that you would expect given how tight the labor market is, and so that's a little bit of a surprise. And as I said, through the second quarter, nominal personal income is down 3.3% for the year. So, whether you want to be cautious and stick with our current forecast, or be an optimist like me. That's up to you. I mean, the differences between those are well within our forecasting abilities.
Carl, you
Marcus?
said,
Okay, did
you said we have to have growth to hit the -0. Well, what are we right now?
minus
-1.3.
3.3 year to date.
And that's over 9 months? Or,
No, it's over. We've only got 2 quarters of data.
so basically the second half would have to average somewhere around 6%. 6%?
No, about 3%.
Oh, 3%, that's right. Another 6 months at 3% to take it to 0.
I mean, that's pretty weak growth considering that inflation is around 6%,
Yeah.
and we're continuing to add jobs, right? So, I mean, total income, but again, it's fighting against that year-over-year decline in transfer payments. I mean, basically, we think most of that decline in transfer payments is over. It'll still show up. I mean, in other words, it's not going to continue to fall quarter to quarter. Rather, it will flatten out. And I mean, the programs that were supporting that ended at the end of last year.
You're basically saying it's going to swing 6% in the last, from -3 to +3.
Well,
For the last 6
it will
months.
end the year. So my suggestion was a forecast of 0, of no
But
growth.
if we're -3 for the first 6 months, and you're saying to take it back to 0 at the end of the year, we got to get +3. So it's going to go from
You have to have-
-3.
Well, yeah.
We need a 6-point swing, you said.
Yeah, and the way that can happen is the transfer payments stop being a drag. They stop falling. They're still a drag, but they're not continuing to decline quarter to quarter. And actually, that already happened. First quarter. So in the first quarter of the year, really from fourth quarter to all the way to the second quarter, the level of transfer payments has remained pretty constant. But in the first quarter, on a year-over-year basis, remember the year-over-year for first quarter 2022 was being compared to first quarter 2021 when we had the second round of, so that must have been American Rescue Plan, right? And we had all the direct payments to households. So we went from, we had almost a 40% drop year over year in transfer payments.
Because when did the subsidies actually stop? I know like some of them stopped in the third quarter of 21, like the employee retention credit. But I don't know when all the PPP.
The PPP stuff was still showing up in these numbers all the way through the end of last year, and it may even still be showing up a little bit because some of it does show up in labor earnings for, I think, for sole proprietors, but I haven't looked at it recently, so I don't want to claim more than I really know. But the PPP program ended a long time before that.
Table 2 on page 4 shows you what you're really comparing things to, right? So if you look on page 4, 2021, the first quarter, there was an increase of 14.3%, right? And so we had compared to the same period previous year, we had a negative 6.5%, right? And so that might give you some ideas of what you're comparing things to.
So it's the second quarter, it's actually second quarter of 21, it was -1.
Yes.
So it already really went down in the second quarter of 21. But then I see some growth.
What table are you looking at?
Carl, it's page 4,
Yeah.
table
Page 4.
2, all the way down at the very bottom. These are the percentage change of the same period in the previous year for TPI.
Because the American Rescue, wasn't it the Consolidated Budget Act in December 20 that they passed the second round of the PPP. It wasn't the American Rescue Plan, right?
Yeah, but also people got the $1,400, right, in
Yeah,
January.
yeah. How much is that? How much is the child, like the credits, the child?
That's got to be huge.
You know, Kurt, it's been 6 months since I think any of us looked at those numbers,
Okay.
because they're all in the past. And if you look at what total transfer payments are, which is what really matters, total transfer payments in
Because you one of the reasons you're saying that it's going to go up, it's going to swing 6% is you're saying there's going to be a decrease in the decline in the
So
transfer
look,
payments, right?
in
That's what you're saying. So I'm trying to get a gauge on, what's the decline in the transfer payments?
so in 2021 first quarter, there was, can't be right. Let's see, what's the units here? $27 billion in transfer payments. And normally we're looking at a number, well, pre-pandemic, the quarterly numbers were 13 billion. So in the first quarter of 2021, it was 27 billion. These are all annualized. So it's not 27 billion a quarter. It's take 27 and divide it by 4 if you want the, but so it's the way BEA reports today is it's annualized. So if the transfer payments had continued at the same level for the whole year, we would have seen 27 billion. In the first quarter, it was 16 billion. First quarter of 2022. So that's how much they've dropped, right? So they're almost back to where they're not back to where they were pre-pandemic. But so first and second quarters of this year, it was 16 billion. Completely, and actually fourth quarter of last year was 16 billion. So they've completely flattened out. So all that's going on is that in the first quarter of the year, when we have that on page 4, the first quarter shows a 6.5% drop in personal income. That's because we had an almost 50% drop in transfer payments. We had 10 billion less in transfer payments on an annualized basis in the first quarter of 2022 than we did in the first quarter of 2021. And then when you get to the second quarter, there's still a drop, because second quarter of 2021 was 19 billion and second quarter of 2022 was 16 billion. But when you get to third quarter of last year, it was only 17 billion. So the drag is basically going away.
I mean, how much money is coming in that would impact this, like from the infrastructure law, as well as the deficit reduction law?
There's something on the order of 2.8 billion in infrastructure spending. I believe that's the right number.
For Hawaii.
Yeah, but that's not even, that hasn't been spent yet, right?
Really?
So
Yeah.
a lot of that's going to the counties, and they've got 4 or 5 years to spend it. So, my recommendation was I'm perfectly fine with leaving our forecast unchanged. I'm just telling you what our current forecast coming out of our model is for 0.
No, I'm open-minded, but I'm just trying to test it based on things going on, to see, because a 6-point swing is pretty big from -3 to
Well, not when
+3.
you're talking about a situation where your transfer payments have been cut in half. That's not much of a swing.
But I'm trying to look at the the third and fourth quarters. Is it going to swing up by 6%? I know there's a big drop in the first quarter, a huge drop, 20%.
So by fourth quarter of 2021,
Yeah.
transfer payments were 16.3 billion. And right now, in the last 2 quarters, they've been 16.1 billion. So essentially, that enormous drop that we saw in the first 2 quarters. So I'll tell you what the year-to-date numbers are for transfer payments. And so keep in mind that total personal income in the first half of this year is about 86 billion. And last year, in the first half of the year, over 20 billion of that was in transfer payments. So transfer payments are down 31% year to date. And what I'm telling you is that for the second half of the year, that decline is going to be, I don't know if I can do that math in my head, average of about 17 billion compared to an average of about 16 something. So the decline is going to be maybe 4% instead of 31%.
Is there anything else that might be pushing up the personal income?
Yeah, wages, more people working, 6% inflation.
It's
So
not
we
a-
actually should have actually hourly earnings through the third quarter. Let's
Is
see if I can.
6% Hawaii's inflation as opposed to 8 something for national.
I mean, it's probably 6.6. I would have to double check. I can't remember what the last data point was. Consumer price index for Hawaii year to date. Actually, the September number was 6.6. Yeah, our inflation numbers have been much lower than the national numbers. Year to date through September is 6.7%. So the wage data that we have, so let's say hourly wages, I don't have hourly for everybody. Let's look at weekly wages for sorry, I thought, oh, I see what the problem is. I think I thought I had this for total non-farm. Here it is. Total non-farm. So year to date, total non-farm hourly earnings are up 2.5% in Hawaii.
In terms of dollars, what does that equate to?
30, almost $34 an hour. It's average
So-
hourly for total non-farm workers.
So would that be in the billings? In terms
No,
of
hourly. This is an hourly wage.
But in terms of the overall base, the wage base.
Well, multiply 35 times 40 hours a week for 52 weeks times 650,000 workers. And I mean, it's essentially what's going into the labor earnings. So the reason I brought up that there's 2.5% growth in hourly wages on average. So there's another reason why wages, and so that data goes through September, right? So we have our income data through the first half of the year. And actually in the third quarter, the wages, I'll tell you what it was. So wages grew 4% in the third quarter of the year, right? So that would argue you take an hourly wage, it's gone up 4%. And that's not just for hourly workers. It's literally an estimate of the hourly wage for everybody. And you add to that the fact that we've added employees, right? So total non-farm workforce grew in the third quarter. And all those are reasons that the labor income side of income is going up. So in the third quarter of the year, jobs grew 2.5%, wages grew 4%. So there's 6% nominal. There you go. That's the number, Kurt. You were looking for the 6% swing. There it is. 2.5% growth in number of people working, 4% growth in the average wage. And that's just the third quarter. So I'll move 0.
Any further discussion?
How many people are working now? Carl, I know we had quite a drop for a while.
Oh, you know what? I should look at our benchmark data because so the data is subject to revision and they do it every spring. And we estimate what the revision is going to be. And I'll tell you, yeah, and by our estimate, it's actually, when you look at the revised data, instead of 2.5% job growth, it's 4% job growth in the third quarter. And so that's 618,000 people versus, or 618,000 jobs versus 661,000 back in 2019, fourth quarter.
So we're still have a ways to go to get back to that.
Yeah, so we're still 40,000 jobs below pre-pandemic levels. Because that's a quarterly number. If you look at the last data point, the September data point is 621,000. It's about the same. And
I'm
the
seeing
labor
like
force
614 on DBED's site, but
well, that data will change in March, and we're telling you what it's going to change to.
oh, I see.
Yeah, so we're estimating what the revision will be before they release it.
I see.
Using the same data that's used to do the revision.
Okay.
And it won't be exactly right, but so far in the last 5 years we've been doing it, it's always pointed us in the right direction. So the number will almost certainly be higher than the official preliminary data.
Okay. I think it's just really tough to do forecasts when you've got such huge swings in various stuff. And we're trying to do a percentage change.
Yeah.
And you've got
yeah, with those
really
swings in the transfer payments, as large as they are, it just swamps everything else.
Yeah, it
right?
does. It does.
So even if we get to 0, I mean, Hawaii residents will feel poorer on average than they did in 2021, with a 6+% inflation increase on top of 0 nominal income growth.
Right.
It's it's pretty stark.
Yeah.
Carl, one thing I've noticed here is that, there's been such a shortage of labor here. Businesses are basically cutting back on hours and cutting back on staff rather than hiring more with increased wages because we can't find the labor to fill the positions. And to the extent you have unfilled positions, you're cutting back your business. I think that, we might see some effect of the business's income going down simply because they're not opening their stores or restaurants as long as they used to. I mean, I'm not sure if it's happening in Oahu, but here in Maui, that's what I see. People are just cutting back on services, hours, everything to get by. But that means somebody's absorbing, the last loss of revenue.
I wouldn't argue with that. I mean, the numbers that that I was talking about most recently, we're already in the data all the way through the third quarter. We've got 1 quarter left, right? So all the way through the third quarter, by the official preliminary data, we had 2.5% growth in job counts. So yeah, people are struggling to find workers, but somebody's finding them, right? I mean, we got a new census economic pulse, or I can't remember what they call it, the census pulse surveys today that are basically showing that one of the things that's happening is people are still being affected by COVID in terms of their ability to go to work, and long COVID. But I mean, by our estimates, there's 20, 30 plus thousand people who are being affected by long COVID. And my guess is what's happening is that a combination of decline in population and outflow of reduction in the labor force, but you also have people who are in the labor force, but they're working fewer hours, or they're only working one job. And so if you look at the household survey, the employment numbers are within a few percentage points of their pre-pandemic level, but the payroll job count is still about 7% below its pre-pandemic level. So a lot of what's going on is people have switched to gig work, or they've switched to a reduced hours, or they only have one job. And so that's one of the reasons why businesses are finding it so difficult. And the places where they're finding it the most difficult are in the service sector, in retail and accommodations and food service. And so, yeah, it's a real problem.
I will say that I would agree, Carl, that it is a real problem, that people are still struggling, trying to find qualified people who want to work. But I will say that in the last few months, it does feel as though, just speaking personally, that we're seeing more applicants, more and more ability to fill vacant positions than we had, let's say, 6 months ago or 12 months ago.
And that's consistent with the data that show almost a 13,000 person increase in the labor force this year. And if the most recent data point puts us within, let's see, less than 10,000 drop in the labor force. So we've gone from 685,000 people in the labor force in 2019 to 677,000. So we're within striking distance of that labor force recovery. But see, you can still, that labor force number could be there, but still, if people aren't taking their second job, right, you only get counted in the labor force once,
Yeah.
but you get counted in the payroll numbers multiple times. And so I think that's a fair amount of the explanation.
I don't know if other people are finding that to be the case. Scott?
I mean, I've mostly heard from retailers and food service that, and there was a thing in the news the other day about I can't remember which restaurant it was that was shutting down part days and shutting down on weekends and not serving breakfast anymore.
Rainbows.
Yeah, that's right, Rainbows.
Rainbows Drive.
Yeah,
Ah,
they're
find
open,
people.
and you hear this a lot in food service where businesses just have to shut because they don't have anybody to run their business.
Yeah, but I'd echo. I mean, I'm seeing more on the professional side what Chris is seeing. Yeah, the number of applicants we have for open positions has increased dramatically. I think we're seeing more applicants, and there seems to be more bodies out there potentially.
I think that's related to COVID and people getting back in the workforce, right? Everybody's going back to school, the masks are coming off, and people are feeling more comfortable to get back out there.
And I think along with that, Carl, to your point, people don't want to have, 5 hours here from 6 p.m. to, 11 p.m. If they can have an 8 to 5 sort of job on Monday through Friday, they would much prefer that than some of the part-time gigs where you catch a few hours here and there. That's really tough on a person. So we have seen that too. for
Good.
even the lower level positions. Oh, you mean I don't have to work on weekends and evenings and
Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody's still trying to figure it out, right? And
Yeah.
how to make the positions work for the employee and the employer.
Mhm. Yes,
I would go with the zero, not only because of what we discussed, but if you look at the simple average of the models, it's 0.2. I mean, it's pretty close to zero. I can't, based on that average, I'm comfortable with that. And we've baked in 3/4 of the year already, so I would second that, Carl's motion.
Any further discussion, Scott? Marilyn?
No,
Christie?
trying to remember what our original forecast is. We're going from
wait,
-1.5 to 0.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Are
we
you
might
okay?
still reach that -1.5.
No.
But really, I mean, that's, if we get that close, we'll be lucky with these kinds of big swings.
Yeah.
Christie, any further comments or discussion?
No, I'm okay with 0.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope we get to 0. That would be nice.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. That's
Okay.
optimistic.
But do other people feel differently? Maryland, Scott?
No, I think, yeah, the zero makes sense to me. I think it is tough because of the swings in the transfer payments, but I think
Yeah.
the way Carl mentioned, I mean, just, trying to find that 6%, I mean, the 2% from the additional labor and then the 4% wage increase, I mean, that's the 6% right there. So that obviously gets you right back to zero. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
There's no-
I
yeah.
hate to agree with Carl, but I kind of goes against my grain.
It's okay. We're all going to be wrong. So
Yeah, we're gonna be wrong no matter what.
That's what we do.
yeah.
If there no further discussion, take a vote. Vice Chair Newell,
Yes,
Dr. Bonham.
Aye.
Councilmember Maynard,
Yes,
Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Okay, the vote carries unanimously for calendar year 2022, revising the growth rate from -1.5 to 0%. Okay.
Now the harder one.
Next discussion is the personal income forecast for the following calendar year 2023. Carl, you want to lead us out? No, yeah. You persuaded us on the first year.
You're on mute, Carl.
Carl, we can't hear you.
I was just so surprised when I looked at the page 8, the summary of the TPI forecast, and to see D-beds at 2.5% for 2023. Wow, that's, I don't know how you do that. I mean, that would suggest another year of negative income growth. And I think our current forecast for inflation for next year is, let's see. It's over 4%. I mean, our current, when I say our, it's me running the UHERO model today with all the updated data. I get 5.2% for nominal income next year. So not much real growth, but a little bit.
I kind of like our 4% that we are.
Is that what we have?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carl, what do you
I
think?
think that's very plausible. I mean, this 5% may still be too optimistic. I mean, our forecast is for essentially flat jobs from fourth quarter of this year all the way to fourth quarter of next year, almost no job growth at all. And the unemployment rate goes up about 50 basis points. So, we'll be impacted by the US recession and probably a global recession in 2023. And it's, and the wild card is still whether or not the state and the counties can mobilize the construction dollars. Are there enough construction workers to do the work? Are they taxed? This is about income, so it's not about taxes. And then whether or not we actually see a Japanese visitor recovery that's even as strong as our relatively weak forecast.
Carl, what do you mentioned a global recession in 2023. Can you expand on that further?
Well, we already forecast a US recession in our last report. We didn't do, I don't think we did a global forecast that time. I think that's coming out this next quarter. Frankly, I don't see how Europe is going to avoid a recession. And so, and one thing, I don't remember what the definition of a global recession is, but it doesn't involve global GDP falling, right? It doesn't have to turn negative or anything like that. But with Europe and who the heck knows what's going on in China, they'll still be shut down in 2023, I think. So, whether it meets the definition of a global recession or it just feels like one, it doesn't really make that much difference. Pretty much every place in the world is dealing with fighting inflation. And with two major economies, US and Europe, in a very deep slowdown or a significant slowdown, it's going to feel like a global recession.
When do you think it may occur in 2023? Middle of the year, end of the?
Well, we forecast the US recession for the first half of the year, but we'll be wrong, right? And it's possible that it won't even happen, right? The US economy continues to be stronger than most people expected. And that's a double-edged sword because it means the Fed will keep pushing up interest rates, which will eventually cause the recession. But it also means that they have to, that as they push them up, it may take longer for it to happen. It might not happen until the second half. Look, it's hard enough to get it right on the direction, much less on what quarter it starts and ends in.
And then how deep and how long do you think it's going to be?
Our forecast was for a modest couple of quarters and then a slow recovery after that. But like I said, we'll be wrong.
But you don't see another, no significant recession.
Look, there's ways that it could happen, right? There are ways that you could have a deep downturn. Yeah. Once you slow the economy down enough. Look at what happened in England, in the UK over the last 6 months, right? It's not hard to have a financial crisis of some kind that can pull the global economy deeper. But forecasting that is, something could go horribly wrong in Ukraine or in China, or all kinds of things are possible. And so once you're grinding to a slow position for the economy, it doesn't take as much to tip you deeper. And then then it feeds on itself, right? When people start to see bad things happening around the world, then they retrench and they cut their spending more and they cut their travel more, et cetera.
I can see that happening when people are looking at, this war in Ukraine getting worse and China's threatening.
I knew I shouldn't have brought that up.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's going to happen, that we're going to be affected by war. And I had always thought that we should somehow try to estimate what the impact of that would be on our Hawaii economy should that happen. Because I guess just seeing what they're doing now, we're talking nuclear and hypersonic missiles and all that. And they don't seem to be backing down and trying to reach a compromise. And North Korea is shooting their missiles over towards South Korea and Japan, and China is saying that Taiwan belongs to them. So I'm not sure that we can ignore the geopolitical impact of all these events, this, geopolitical skirmishes. And to me, it's going to be more money directed toward other things rather than tourism, probably.
So I'm going to add a little comment to that. So I mean, yeah, you're right. I can see all these issues are going to scare potentially tourists away and cause others to hunker down. But what's happening, what we're seeing from a construction industry is that the federal government is ramping up spending because of that. They've already committed significant dollars to a lot of defense projects, and so some of those were in the works, but there's more and more money coming. So there seems to be a big impetus. They're going to be spending a lot on we've been hearing on defense initiatives, both here in Hawaii as well as throughout the Pacific. So that may offset some of the downturn that we're seeing, from an income perspective from tourists. There's going to be defense spending here, which from construction industry may prop things up a little bit. It's not going to be as widespread as obviously as tourism has an impact across the islands for everything. But I think there will be some offset, I think, from the federal defense spending that we may see here.
But we're not really making weapons here in Hawaii, and so you're talking about maybe the infrastructure with troops being stationed here or whatever. I'm not sure, but it seems like.
So the challenge of all this is so yes, there's geopolitical risk, and it's heightened, right? It's I don't think anybody would argue that it's not greater today than it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago was the pandemic, but obviously the risk of North Korea was there. I mean, these risks were always there. They're a little worse now, but putting them into a forecast and putting any kind of timing on it is harder than forecasting the stock market or forecasting the next recession, right? No one can tell you what the end game is with Ukraine or when it will occur. And so, what you normally have is a transmittal letter for the forecast that says that this is based on the current situation, and anytime if there would be a major change in the geopolitical situation, unfortunately, we would be called back in to make a forecast that we also couldn't really quantify at that moment, right? But to try and build that into the forecast, other than saying that over a long period of time, we're basically going to be a little bit more pessimistic because of geopolitical risk. But doing anything other than that, I don't know how you would do that. And it could actually go exactly the other way, right? Which was to some extent what Scott was talking about. So increased risk in the Pacific or in Asia could very well mean more troops in Hawaii. And we've seen a decline in troops over the last couple of years. And so that suggests that there's room for them, and that would bolster income in the state.
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, so they already are planning on closing they're in the process of closing the bases in Okinawa or reducing those. And I know that there is, I forgot what the number, but there's tens of thousands of troops that are going to be relocated here to Honolulu and Kaneohe. So, that's going to be some of it that there, but it's all over the place that they're going to be heading to.
And they're sending
and that gives you an idea of how hard it is to put this into a forecast, because we've been talking about this for the last 15 years. Right. And I mean, I've been building those personnel into our military forecast and changing when they arrive every year for at least the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think we're actually much, much closer to it actually happening now than we've ever been.
Yeah, that's what my concern is, that next year seems like it's a year that more might be happening with Russia and Ukraine and China and maybe even North Korea. So
But you don't know what will happen. I mean, the Ukraine situation could be resolved next year. Oil prices might be half what they are right now.
well, it certainly doesn't look like that. I was hoping it would, but it seems like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It doesn't seem like it's getting better. And so if people aren't going to back down from their positions, then it's just going to get worse. And I guess we would have to deal with that possibility.
So where are we on the vote? Carl, you had proposed what? 5.5?
I think I proposed 5 and Christie
Christie
proposed
said-
that we stick with our current forecast.
Okay.
Oh, our current forecast is 4.86.
Oh, okay.
Really? I thought it was 4.
Yeah. Council on Revenues General Fund meeting from September 2022. That's must be the average of the fiscal years.
Yeah, the August, no, our August.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah, 4%.
It's 4.
I don't wanna go
4.86 is the
quickly.
average of the models.
So I think 4 is a good number.
Well, I agree that it's probably be better than a more optimistic number, given the circumstances that we see around the world.
Carl, can I persuade you?
I'll take the over, but I mean, I'm again, the difference between 4% and 5% is well within our ability to forecast.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think?
No, so I was tending to be a little bit more conservative, and I was thinking Christie, along the same lines as Christie, that 4% seems a little bit more. It feels a little bit better to me. Yeah, I'm hopeful that it'll hit 5, like Carl's saying, but trying to be a little conservative here. I think to a certain extent, just knowing, taking into consideration what Marilyn's saying, some of the uncertainties that we're facing, just in general all across, that it's a little hard to be too optimistic right now at this point.
Mhm.
What do you
Make it a
think?
formal motion?
Yeah, after we get some input from
Okay, sure.
Wendell, yeah.
I'm
Wendell,
good
what do you
with, I'm good with quid pro quo at this point.
Why don't we, if there's no more discussion, we'll take a vote. Vice Chair Noel, at 4%. You seconded it, right?
Oh, yes.
You seconded
to the
it, yeah. Christie's vote. I mean, Christie's proposal.
Who seconded the motion?
I thought you did.
Okay, that's fine. I can second it and I vote yes.
Okay. Dr. Bonham,
Yes.
Councilmember Maynard,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
So it carries, the vote carries unanimously 6-0 at, so the council is going to keep its forecast at 4% for calendar year 2023. Okay, the next item is the next general fund forecast. And we're going to be changing administration. So I don't know, Seth, do you have any comments about when we should have the meeting? Oh, we can't hear you, Seth.
The 10th is a due date, so I would suggest doing it on the 5th of January.
Will we have some input from, the December revenue?
Nope, but I can give you some numbers.
Some preliminary numbers
Yep,
at that
mhm.
point. So
We
the
won't have the
5th,
final, but we can get close.
Okay, what day of the week is that?
It's
The
Thursday.
That works for me.
I'm good.
Okay, so that would be January the 5th at 2 p.m. You're
Yes.
looking at? Okay. How are you, Dr. Bonham?
You're muted,
Yeah,
Carl.
we couldn't hear you. Okay, you good? Marilyn, you're okay?
The 5th is fine.
Okay, and then Wendell, you said you're okay, right?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then Scott, you're okay?
I'm good as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the next general fund meeting will be January the 5th, which is a Thursday at 2 p.m. Okay, any other items on the agenda today? Okay, well, thank you everyone for another very productive and good council meeting. We both votes carried unanimously, which is good, but we all have our own minds. Okay.
So I guess we'll find out who was right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we won't see everyone, but happy Halloween, happy Thanksgiving.
No,
Absolutely,
happy
yes.
holidays.
Okay.
And happy
Yeah,
holidays.
Happy holidays.
The Fed meets next month, beginning of the month. Be careful. It's going to be a
Yeah.
scary Halloween.
Well,
Oh,
what do you
yes.
think? 75 basis points? Carl? You're not-
Oh,
Yeah.
You froze. You froze. That would be good. The interest rate froze.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.